All right, and welcome, my friend, to the next episode in the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the RDP YouTube channel, where we are simplifying this whole diet and exercise thing by taking a fundamental approach to fitness, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, and this week's episode is sponsored by all of the RDP resources listed down below in the description, including the entire RDP library, books like Grindstyle Calisthenics, Micro Workouts, and Overcoming Isometrics, plus my new book, which is Suspension Calisthenics, all about how to turn that simple suspension trainer that you see at the gym or maybe collecting dust in your closet somewhere into the ultimate weight machine that fits in your pocket. That's something I'm just wrapping up the final little touches now. Hopefully going to be out in the next week or two. I'll keep you posted, but you can catch up on all the other Grindstyle resources like Grindstyle Calisthenics and the Overcoming Isometrics book down below in the description. This week's episode is all about Q&A. Over the past couple of weeks, I've dove into some really deep topics when it comes to what really makes fitness work, because that's what happens when you take a fundamental approach to fitness. Is you really kind of take the red pill, as it were. You peek behind the curtain, and there's a lot of stuff that becomes apparent to you over the years, and some of it's pretty deep. And that's what I've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. Last week, I talked about the all-important law of attention, not the law of attraction, but the law of attention, and basically how we regulate and manage our attention, and that sets the stage for almost all of our decisions that we make, not only when it comes to health and fitness, but life in general. And sadly enough, most of us are not putting nearly as much of our, attention into controlling our attention, and it gets hijacked by a lot of things all around us, other people, coworkers, family members, not to mention things like social media. And if you're not taking control much of your attention, other people will, and you're essentially not steering your own ship, as it were. So that's last week's episode. Very deep, very important to understand, because when it comes down to the real essence of what makes fitness work, it goes so much more beyond sets and reps and macronutrient ratios. Not to trivialize that stuff, but in all honesty, when you really get down to what's most important in fitness, stuff like how many sets should I do and what should I work out 2 or 3 times a week and stuff is usually actually more the superficial stuff that really isn't that important. We want to get down into the deeper subliminal stuff that is important. But nonetheless, during those talks and stuff, because there's a lot to cover, I haven't been answering a lot of your questions. And I feel, unfortunately, like I've kind of neglected a lot of you, dear listener, in the RDP community. So this episode is dedicated to you. It is 100% open format, all you answering your questions. That's the entire format of today's show, is just call on in, send me your text here, and I will answer the questions. Anything you want to ask me. Fitness, diet, exercise, what my favorite type of beer is, whatever you've ever wanted to know that's burning in the back of your mind, now is your chance to ask. So let's jump right on in. We got a couple people coming on in. S. Lee asking right off the bat, are posts behind the neck good? I like doing them, but I see different opinions about them. So this is a classic example of something that can potentially be good, but oftentimes is not. And the reason is because it requires a level of skill and technical proficiency that is not common in many individuals. And it all boils down to the anatomy of the muscles we're trying to hit. This is one of the reasons why I'm also doing new video series on the Red Delta Project, exploring one muscle a week on how it's structured and how to best utilize it. This past week, I addressed the pectoral muscles and how most of the advice I was always taught about, wide, nice grips on bench presses and push-ups and stuff is not at all the best way to address the pectorals. But this one pertains more to the lats. And it's kind of rooted in the idea that the lats are running in this pennation down and back along the muscles in this sideways format. And so what ends up happening is people think, okay, if I get my shoulders back, my head is back, then I'm going to be doing good. And the key here is it's getting your shoulders back. A lot of times when we do pull downs and pull ups and vertical pulling motions, we're hunching forward. This is what I often call the off position. When we have a kyphotic posture, the muscles in the chest and the back have a much harder time engaging, and the joints often get a lot more stress. So the hope is that when we do things behind the neck, our shoulders are back. We're getting much more retraction with the scapula. And with that retraction, oftentimes comes more engagement. However, it's certainly possible to still go behind the neck and still have protraction of the shoulder blades in that kyphotic posture, where your head is forward and you're still hunched up, which takes something that can be problematic and makes it even worse. So it's really nothing about the neck. It's nothing about behind the head or anything like that. We're getting lost in the woods there. To a large degree, it shouldn't matter very much if you go to the front or the back. Ideally, if you're doing pull-ups or pull-downs, you could do it behind the back or behind the head and in front of the head, and it would feel exactly the same. It shouldn't be different. But it often is because, my shoulders are in a different position, my head is in a different position, my spine is in a different position, and so on. So whenever we're making these variations to what we're doing, it's a learning opportunity. Same thing with like push-ups. Like, if I put my arms here, I feel it much more on my back or my shoulders or whatever. It's like, well, why aren't you doing that beforehand? Remember, the exercise shouldn't be responsible for how your muscles are working. You are. If you want your muscles working, turn them on. You need to proactively use your muscles. But when we do something different, like behind the head, and something's different, it's like, okay, so why don't I have that to the front? Now, for me personally, I've always preferred coming to the front just because that usually gets a lot better motion in the shoulders. Your lats don't necessarily just adduct your arms into your side, but also extend the arms back. And when we do things behind the head, the elbows are back and we're not getting that much retraction or extension in the shoulders. And it's just, this sort of thing is really weird and awkward. It can work, but it's usually not as reliable. So I'm always here in front of me, much more reliable. So I would go in general, it's one of these things of it's okay, it's fine if you've got your ducks in technique in a row. It may not be as bad as some people say it is, but for my money, you're probably still going to just be better off coming to the front of the chest, or maybe sometimes you can use, individual handles coming to the sides or something. It just generally is a better way to go about it. Not that behind the head is bad, but I would just say that going to the front is just going to be better. And get those shoulders back, people. Get them way, way back. I love this. Everybody that's answering questions as well in the community. This is a great community. RDP community is so strong. You all help each other out. So remember, when you're talking here, put a "Hey, Matt" in the subject line so I know it's something directed at me. All right. Sorry, I can't pronounce his name. Bayaji, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is push-pull leg raises, squat and bridge are enough to build good-looking body and some muscles? Absolutely. Always remember that most of the ability to develop your physique comes from the most basic fundamental movement patterns, which you just mentioned here. Push, pull, squat. That's like 80% of it right there. And I'm not even talking like what technique are you doing? You mentioned push-ups, pull-ups, leg raises. That I don't care what you're doing, what technique or what exercise it is. Push, pull, squat. That's the lion's share of it. Leg raises, and you have a bridge, so you're doing flexion, extension. Yeah, definitely. Like that should be your lion's share of movements right there. If you have one dedicated big movement there and maybe a couple secondary things that you just use as an accessory once in a while, absolutely that can be enough for sure. You don't need a million different exercises. In fact, anecdotally, the best physiques I've ever witnessed in gyms and people I've known and friends and stuff, they always are like, oh yeah, I used to have like 50 different exercises. Now I do like X, Y, Z, and sometimes this other one. And that's it. Like I always cite my friend Mark, who I knew way back in the day, push-ups, dips, and pull-ups. That's all he did. And the man had a body that I still have yet to find rivaled today. Coming back around. Adam Mundorf saying, do you think that calisthenics offer themselves better to longevity than weights? I've just noticed so many busted up weightlifters as of late. It can be, but not necessarily. And again, it's usually more about users. But when it comes down to longevity due to a particular training style, there's a lot of other lifestyle factors and also a lot of genetic stuff too. One of my early mentors, Zach Evanish, was talking in a podcast once, and he's like, look, a lot of times the ability to become very successful in a sport or to develop a good physique often just boils down to, are you resilient enough to just train very hard long enough? Now, I'm certainly not that guy. I was busted up and shot the hell from my knees and my hips and my shoulders and everything before I learned how to even drive. I do not have a resilient body for whatever reason. I have poor alignment issues that I had to deal with and stuff, but I would have basically joint issues before I got out of grade school. So, but I know some people, you look at them training and they're like, dear God, that is got to be bad on your back. That can't possibly be good on your knees. And they're like 70 years old and they're like, nope, never had any issues. It's like, how does that happen? So a lot of times when it comes down to longevity, yeah, like a lot of things in life, it does come down to luck to some degree. You just built better than someone else in muscle insertion points and thickness of tendons and things like that. But a lot of times the ability to stay strong and resilient with a method largely boils down to how smart you're training in that method versus how like you're beating yourself up. When you make hard work and stress the objective in anything, your chances of beating yourself up and having these chronic injuries goes through the roof, regardless of what the method is. I mean, yoga, people are like, yoga, you can't hurt yourself in yoga. I know more people with injuries from yoga than you would imagine. It's crazy. It's worse than CrossFit. It's like, dear God, everyone in this yoga class is beat to schnot. But there are other people who are like, oh yeah, I run like long distance and I beat myself with hammers on a daily basis and I feel fine. And a large part of it is, do you stimulate versus annihilating? Do you train with an objective to teach your body how to perform better? Or do you just drive yourself into the ground as hard as you can every time? If your objective is to just beat yourself up, you're going to get beat up. Pretty profound, I know. But if you go into your training sessions with the mentality of, I'm trying to use my body better, I'm trying to use more hip stability in my squats, barbell back squats, leg press, pistol squats, doesn't matter. If you're trying to use your body better, your longevity skyrockets. Just because you're not trying to stress your body out, you're trying to be smart about it and teach your body. And usually that means a lot less stress on the body, which over time means greater longevity. All right, Scott Hughes coming. Sorry if you haven't seen one of your videos on this, but how do you feel about pelican curls? I don't generally. I don't really do them. I don't know enough about them. Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I would say, in the same case of like behind the neck pull downs. It's probably fine if you know what you're doing, but most people don't know what they're doing about it. Requires a lot of mobility, requires a lot of stability. Most people don't have those qualities. And it's one of those things that you don't certainly need. Like if you never did it, you'd never miss it. So it's not like you have to be able to do this to really make the progress that you want. So it's one of those things you can play around with it, make sure you're learning it from someone who is proficient at it, who is really good at it and can spot any sort of issues or problems from it. But generally, it's one of those things that's just been so far distance on my own radar that I'm like, don't know, don't care. I don't do it. I don't think people need to do it. And I don't think it's something, if it just immediately got erased from human consciousness tomorrow, we wouldn't miss it. So yeah, explore it if you're curious about it, but don't worry too much about it. Santiago, how's it going, man? Hey, Matt, what can I do to gain even more muscle? I am what some would call an ectomorph, yeah, or what I would call a burner. In the body type fields, you have builders and you have burners. Burners, which I'm also very much like that as well. A burner is someone who is a lot easier time staying lean, but harder time building muscle. And a builder is someone who builds muscle a lot easier. Think of your, stereotypical like power lifter, strongman kind of thing, but getting leaner is the harder part of that. So you're a builder or a burner. So as ectomorphs, it's going to be harder. So to some degree, we are fighting genetics and build. You can't turn a greyhound into a bulldog. So the first thing we've got to do is recognize that to some degree, your shape and the aesthetic design of your body is created by Mother Nature. As I always say, you cannot change your body, but you can modify it. You can't take a Prius and turn it into a Ferrari. You can make it a faster Prius, you can make it a sportier Prius, but it can't become a Ferrari, right? So that's what we do with our body. But nonetheless, us ectomorphs, we have the advantage because it takes even a little bit of muscle and we look jacked because we're so lean. Lots of times, some of the most jacked guys out there, jacked in quotes, are just really, really lean and you can see their muscles. So you have that advantage. So when we're talking about trying to do that, we have to recognize that a lot of the stuff in our fitness culture, it doesn't apply quite the same way. First and foremost, the whole diet thing, right? And the whole healthy eating thing, like don't eat these foods, don't eat those foods. I say, screw it all, eat anything you want. Be mindful of portions still. I'm not saying you eat like a pig and nothing but donuts and cheeseburgers and fries all the time, all junk food. But a lot of times the big shoot at yourself in the foot kind of thing that I see a lot of us burners do, and ectomorphs do, is they're like, I'm trying to build muscle. Oh, and I'm also on the paleo, fasting, keto, organic, localvore diet. And it's like, oh God, dude, people go on that stuff to try and lose weight. Like if you're trying to gain weight, don't use weight loss strategies. And 90% of the diet and nutrition information out there is all about weight loss. It's not about health. It's not about nutritional fortitude or anything like that. It's all about trying to get people to be skinny because that's all people care about. That's what sells. So don't follow weight loss advice for nutrition. Eat a lot. Don't be shy about the ice cream. Don't be shy about pizza and burgers and stuff. Yes, you definitely want lots of good healthy food. Consider my P strategy, my 3P strategy. Every meal, plant, protein, and portion size. And if you're on the fence about things, double the portion sizes of things. Just don't feel like, oh, what if I gain fat? Don't worry about it. Your body's geared towards not getting fat. If you do start to get fat, great. Now you know you're eating enough. The whole nutrition thing's taken care of. You're not going to be suffering from building muscle because of that. Once you start putting on body fat, you know you're eating more than you need, and it's going to be like that to take it off. So don't worry too much about it. So that's the diet side. Training side, progression. Lots of stuff out there is about, oh, you're an ectomorph, you need to train like this. Oh, you're a burner, you got to train like this. You're a skinny. Forget all that. You don't need any special diet, special type of training. And the reason is because nobody needs special training. The fundamental reasons why you're going to build muscle is exactly the same for every human being on earth. We are not different. Now, you personally may use different approaches just because it jives better for you. It works better with your preferences and your schedule and stuff like that. Absolutely. But your muscle isn't going to be different than a powerlifter's muscle. We all build for the same reasons. So keep your muscles working progressively harder, focus on progression, stick to the basic fundamental movement patterns that I mentioned earlier, push, pull, squat. That's going to be your highlight there. And make sure you're still trying to get stronger and burning out those muscles to a high degree. That's why we can create that stimulus. So stimulate, don't annihilate, make sure your muscles are working progressively harder over time, and don't be shy about that food. All right. Zaid Khan's asking chest to wall and back to wall handstand push-up distance from the wall. So typically about 6 inches is a good one I've heard of. And largely because that's the distance that a lot of people need from the wall to accommodate either their glutes or their feet, if their feet are flat. So about 6 inches. And of course it's different for every body type, but have someone take a photo or a video of you from the side when you're doing these and see if you're getting straight and vertical when you're against the wall, or if you're leaning one way or the other, and then adjust the distance accordingly. Oops, sorry, Scott. I just addressed that one. I'll get to these real quick because I know the questions are coming in fast and furious. San Diego, already got that. What's our Leaf? What's the opinion on Pioneer Channel? Some really unique perspectives to fitness. I don't think they're unique at all. I think they're exactly fundamental in what we all need to hear. He's a band guy. I'm not much of a band guy. He had a great interview on hybrid calisthenics, though, which I highly recommend. Fine, great. Take whatever tools and takeaways you can from it. It's the only stuff I ever have against is when people are like, this is the only way. This is the best way to burn fat and stuff. When people get dogmatic, then I'm like, not so much. But yeah, you can basically approach things however you like. And that's what I like about it. He's very much a Jeet Kundoist in the fitness world. And I think that's something we all need to hear more of, is not so dogmatic. Jeff Stockdale. Hey, Matt, I have a hard time eating enough calories to maintain my surplus. Any tips? So like I was saying earlier, don't be worried about junk food. Don't let the fear mongering of, do you know what's in that pizza and stuff? Junk food is a great caloric fortification. Ice cream and peanut butter is always my go-to. If I'm ever, for whatever reason, in a scenario where I'm like, I just feel like I can't eat enough, I'm always hungry. Ice cream and peanut butter, king size things. But yeah, a lot of times when people are like, I can't have trouble getting enough food. Loosen up the diet. And remember, a lot of the dietary advice out there is a restrictive philosophy. It's a restrictive approach, which some people need, absolutely, but it's not the way to eat healthy. Yes, cutting back is good if you're eating too much, but if you're struggling to get enough calories, you're not eating too much, so you don't need those restrictions. So take off any of those restrictions if you're having them. BK Trainer, good to see you, my friend. What are your thoughts on developing muscle in the lower body, specifically hamstrings? I found that sprinting is a one go-to exercise for developing the hamstrings. Absolutely, right you are, my friend. Hill sprints, also very good for doing exactly that. Of course, it is very much contingent upon the fact of you are engaging those hamstrings while sprinting in the first place. For that, I recommend warming up with the heel against the wall, where you kick your heel back and press it against the wall. Exercise before you're sprinting so you can really get your glutes and your hamstrings engaged. And yeah, when it comes to developing muscle in the lower body, a lot of stuff out there is quads, which is great. Yeah, definitely there. But man, hamstrings make such a difference to the size and the shape of your legs, as well as to your performance. They're like the triceps of your arms. You know, guys, when they start wanting to build bigger arms, like me when I was younger, it's like curls all day long, and we neglect the triceps. It's like, no, if you want bigger arms, build those triceps. Statistically, they have more muscle mass than your biceps do. It's not quite the same with your quads and your hamstrings, of course, but you do want to build up those hamstrings. So definitely there. And I'm a big fan of suspension hamstring curls. Love that exercise because it's one of the most complete hamstring exercises you can ever do. You know, suspension, body weight, whatever. It is fantastic, and it's going to be highlighted, of course, in my upcoming book on suspension calisthenics. It's very easy to progress, and it just really, really nails the hamstrings. It's one of those things where the first time people start doing those sometimes, and they'll be like, oh, my hamstrings cramp. Why did they cramp? It's like, because you've never really worked them that hard. And they're like, but I'm doing all these hamstring exercises in the gym. I'm like, yeah, you are, but you didn't work them that hard. So it's very, very effective for that sort of thing. Relaki, how's it going? Hey, Matt, I had hernia operation. What to do now? Lost a lot of progress since I can't work out for at least 6 weeks. One is talk to your physical therapist, or if they recommend a physical therapist, or at least your doctor, because they have more in-depth knowledge about your injury and your operation than anyone else. So definitely refer to expert advice with hands-on application with you, one-on-one. The internet's created this really crazy idea that we can get everything we need from a screen or from a Google search. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to something specific like that, in-person, one-on-one training and advice is still by far the gold standard. So get in front of people who can tell you what to do with that sort of thing. The other thing too is don't worry about 6 weeks. 6 weeks is nothing. You're barely going to lose an ounce from that sort of thing. And it's going to feel like you're losing a lot more, but you really aren't. It's going to bounce back quick. So take me, for example. I had a ski injury back in late March, and my lower body training was severely compromised for 4 months. 4 months? 3 months? Let's see, April, May, June. So at least 3 months, severely compromised. It still is compromised now. Am I worried about it? Not at all. Am I losing gains? Absolutely. Am I going to get it back? Not a problem at all. It's going to be quick and easy. Because once you've already kind of laid the tracks to make that kind of progress, you'll come back real fast once you get back to it. So don't rush it, because that's just going to delay it. If you get re-injured again, get some one-on-one advice. And when you are ready to go, just do your normal thing. Don't feel like you got to catch back up. Andre Da Silva, how's it going, my friend? Always so good to see you. Hey, Matt, can the addition of isolation exercises for smaller muscles like biceps, triceps, help to get stronger in the main bodyweight exercise like pull-ups and dips? It can, but it doesn't necessarily always happen that way. If that is a muscle that is a weak link in the chain, or you have trouble engaging it, like if you're doing dips and you're like, there's nothing in those triceps, they're barely doing anything, then yeah, it can help. But generally, once that muscle is online and it's working pretty hard in the movement, adding in some isolation stuff may not really do all that much more for you, because it's already as strong as it needs to be relative to the other muscles. So making it stronger may not do a whole lot for you. we could make the argument that, well, yeah, if my triceps are stronger, then that's going to be carried over to dips. But then your chest is the weak link. And typically what ends up happening is when one muscle group is much stronger in a compound movement, and one is weaker, the weaker one will build back up and level things back out. That's why, when people start doing close push-ups, like I always recommend, people are like, that's a triceps push-up. I feel it all my triceps. Yeah, exactly, because your triceps are weak. What do? Nothing. You just keep doing that exercise. The triceps build themselves up to be bigger and stronger. And then you're back on a level playing field, and then everything gets bigger and stronger because it's all on playing on the same team. So if it's a weak link, yeah, but otherwise it's more of a satisfying thing. Like I do tricep and bicep work sometimes, but I don't expect anything really out of it. I don't think it's going to make my arms bigger and stronger. It's more of just like, I just want a good bicep pump at the end of this pull-up workout. It just feels good and satisfying kind of stuff. So that's why I do it now. I don't expect anything out of it though. Nicholas Saucier, thoughts on neck training for grappling, wrestling, BJJ. Extent of my neck, my work has been isometrics, which I do recommend. You see some wacky clips of high-level wrestlers bridging on their neck, and I'm concerned about the damage. Yeah, exactly. This is a question I get asked a lot of times. Jeff Cavalier had a video years ago addressing why he doesn't think that's a good idea. And I made a video on neck training myself. If you just go on the webpage, RDP's YouTube channel, and search neck training, you'll come up with a simple exercise that I recommend. It's an isometric. It doesn't put any direct pressure on the spine or the neck. Should keep the nerves relatively safe and puts a lot of intensity on the muscles as well. So I think it's very good, but yeah, some of the crazy stuff, it's behind the neck stuff. It's like, can it be safe? Can it work? Yes. What's the chances of it being like that though? I don't know. Me personally, I don't like risky exercise. I don't like to do things that are low on the risk. I always like to do exercise that is relatively safe and almost impossible to mess up. So that's why I'll give my clients stuff like sled pushes and push-ups and rows. And they're like, why do we keep doing this? It's like, because it's almost impossible to hurt yourself on this stuff. It's almost impossible to mess it up. But on the other hand, I can also make it ridiculously hard to do. And there's that ratio. The easier it is on the body, but the harder it is on the muscle, the greater the chances are it's going to be effective. But when we're doing exercises that kind of puts you in this a little bit of a nervous state of like fight or flight, like, oh, I'm not so sure about this, it's very hard to push yourself hard enough adequately with that. But when you feel cool and calm and comfortable in the exercise, you can throttle the mother living hell out of it. And if that's not a recipe for success, I don't know what is. Dave coming on in. Argenteo, do you know Alex Salkin? Nope, haven't heard of that name. I think it's interesting that you both have some overlap with crawling type stuff, but the different starting points is cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan of crawling. As a boss of mine once said, that type of technique is, quote, a crack filler. So I was mentioning earlier, the big muscles, push, pull, squat. That's going to be the bulk of what's going to build up muscle and physique and strength and stuff. But there are cracks that still don't quite get addressed. There are little areas of the body that don't quite get their due. And crawling is a great way to make sure that we've got the strength and articulation and stability and mobility to get those other little weak areas that can possibly hinder us over time. That's why we have crawling and grind style calisthenics. Digital Market Monk Gaming. I like that avatar. Very cool. Matt, I've started tracking my calories lately for weight loss, and I hear conflicting opinions on if I should include calories burned in determining how many calories I should eat. Thoughts? Well, yeah, for sure. So, well, please excuse the kitty cat. In conflicting opinions, they're all right, but it's just they're looking at it in different ways. So I'm assuming you're tracking calories because you're looking for a change in weight, either losing weight or gaining weight. And always remember that it's not going to happen from one side of that equation. You're not going to lose or gain weight just because how much you're eating. It's because of the ratio between in versus out, caloric energy in versus caloric energy out. So sometimes to simplify things, because calorie counting is ridiculously hard to get accurate. So sometimes to simplify it, people will say, just track your caloric intake. Because then if you get a rough estimate, and it is going to be a rough estimate of how much you're eating, then you can have your expenditure just whatever it is, and then adjust that accordingly. Okay, so that way you're not trying to track two things at once, because now you're trying to track two things and it's really tricky and it's hard and stuff. So tracking just one thing can really simplify the entire process. But you do want to track both if you are making good changes, substantial changes to your caloric expenditure. So if you are suddenly taking up another sport, like you are fairly sedentary and I'm going to start training for a marathon, okay, your caloric expenditure is going to be crazy as well. So if you're changing your activity levels a lot, it may be a good idea to track your caloric expenditure just to get a bird's eye view of where it might be versus just assuming things. But if your activity level is relatively stable, like I hit the gym 3 days a week, I run a 5K, and I play basketball on Saturday mornings. If that's relatively stable, if your activity level is pretty stable, then don't worry about it too much because it's static, it's stable. If it's stable, you don't necessarily need to track it, and then just look at food and then adjust that accordingly. So both are fine, but the simpler way is just with the food sort of thing. BK Trainer again, addressed that one already. I can only see so many questions here in on a time here, folks. So if I'm missing anything, let me, and feel free to post your questions again too, because if I miss things, then send it through the queue again and I may see it again. Nielsen, okay, so a couple of quick ones. Nielsen asking, lightweight can create hypertrophy, no steroids, and huge, like with power lifters. That's largely just due to a genetic thing. Well, be careful when you lump body type with an activity. Because anybody who's really followed powerlifting know there's no such thing as a standard powerlifting body. You listen to the Stronger by Science podcast and they're like, yeah, this powerlifter just lifted this much weight at a weight of 120 pounds, at a weight of 150 pounds. Like we often think of a stereotypical physique for a type of individual, but it really varies. So this is a byproduct of the method-based approach where we think if you do an exercise like a certain person, you end up looking like them. Not at all. You're going to look like you. If you lifted like a power lifter, are you going to look like a power lifter? Only if you kind of look like a power lifter to begin with. You know, if you're skinny, scrawny, like my ectomorphic friend beforehand, and you take a powerlifting, what are you going to look like? Maybe a little bit bigger ectomorphic power lifter. You're not going to be like that. So this is the thing about the aesthetic demand of fitness that I addressed in my first book, Fitness Independence. Exercise is not a reliable way to change how the body looks. But when we think of, oh, this person looks this way and he's doing that type of activity, he doesn't look like that because of the activity he's doing. He's doing that activity because he already had a body that was pretty close to what you see there to begin with. And then asking follow-up nowadays, what could be similar to the machine Mercy circuit that John Little refers Bruce Lee use at Marcy, the Marcy machine use as last days of life. I don't know, to be honest with you, because that was a very unique piece of equipment. If you ever read Expressing the Human Body, I love the story of that weight machine, though. I mean, it literally was in a warehouse and some guy was like, I'll buy it. And it's sitting in some guy's basement right now. Bruce Lee's weight machine is in some guy's basement as his normal everyday Saturday morning workout routine. It's wonderful. But yeah, back then, exercise equipment is very different than it is now. I don't think you could get, because that thing had an iso rack. It had like a universal machine to it. It had all sorts of crazy stuff that, I mean, you couldn't even get an iso rack now if you tried. But it doesn't matter too much because at the end of the day, it's still push, pull, and squat. Push, pull, and squat and bicep curls on cables and stuff. So no matter what kind of machines you're using now, you're pretty much about the same sort of thing. I would, if I were you, I would get a very basic weight machine that you could get at any sort of like sporting goods store, like a specialty store, not like Dick's Sporting Goods or something, but like a fitness equipment store through Body Solid, Tough Stuff, Hoist, something like that. And then a classic power rack and that'd probably be pretty close to what you'd get for the options on Bruce Lee's machine. Let's see. Coming up with another question here. Sorry, I can't read. I believe that's Arabic, but my, other world views are not that refined to even know. But saying, I can't do bicep curls or any movement where I can bend my arms because tendons rub with each other, something like that. It makes clicking sounds and hurts. See a doctor. Get eyes on exactly what the problem is. So just to kind of get ahead of whatever questions I have, any sort of injury issues, any sort of this hurts, this is a problem when I do this, see a doctor. The internet is a terrible place to self-diagnose and get eyes on what's going on, especially shoulder stuff. My God, there's so many things that can go wrong with the shoulders. I am the last person you want to be asking about that sort of thing, because anything I give you is a straight up guess. I might as well just shake a magic 8-ball and be like, that's what you should do. I have no idea. See a doctor. Get someone to get some eyes on it, and that's going to be your best course of action right there, if you can. Otherwise, do things that don't involve pain. Isometrics may be a good place to start with that if you can't get any sort of assessment on it. Adam Plauché, hey Matt, what are your thoughts on doing dips with hands behind the back instead of to the sides, as of, for example, a park bench? I like that as well. And once again, we're coming into another realm of this area where it's like, it can be good, but it often is not. So bench dips rather, they can be great as long as you don't hunch up, which almost everybody does when they do it. So if you've got the shoulder mobility, you can keep those shoulders retracted, go for it. Although personally for me, I've never liked bench dips, largely because they just don't do as much as dips, as normal dips. It's kind of like saying, no, I don't want that aged filet mignon steak that's been prepared by one of the best chefs in the world. I'd rather have this Oscar Mayer hot dog kind of thing. It's a cheap alternative. You get less from it. So I've just never done bench dips because I just don't think they're as good. Regular dips are probably, you're going to get more out of it. You're going to get more shoulder, more chest, more body position. You're going to get more core activation. Your triceps can potentially get more range of motion. There's more stability in the shoulders. There's more engagement in your back. Bench dips, I know, again, it's a satisfying thing. It's like me doing bicep curls after pull-ups. Do I expect it to do anything? No, I just do it because it feels good. I would put bench dips in the same area. It's like, do it because it feels good. You get a good pump in the triceps, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot out of it when you can do like real dips and regular push-ups. Alex Amini, hey Matt, what are your go-to healthy filling? Sorry. I kept looking at that thinking donut filling. Healthy filling, like, what do you mean? Like jelly versus Boston cream? Healthy filling, as in satisfying, easy to make home-cooked dinner meal. So lots of different things. I like to get a lot of the salmon fillets, marinated salmon fillets at the grocery store or at Costco. I just throw them in the Foreman, cook them right on up, and I have some steamed veggies in the microwave. Boom, put it together, bang. Quick, healthy filling, gets the job done very well. I'm a big sandwich guy too. I really like getting some sandwiches. Just because, same thing, very filling. You load up the veggies on those suckers, good quality multi-grain bread, like meat. Like cold cuts are okay in a pinch, but like real actual meat on the thing, that's usually a go-to that I like as well. Here we go with some fun questions. So Zachary Z, do you like cats, dogs, or both? Both. They're delicious. No, I joke. No, I'm an animal person. I can't have dogs because my lifestyle is all over the place. I'm never home in order to like take them out for walks and things like that. So I have 2 kitty cats. I'll even here show you one of them is sleeping there in her cat tower. She's been there all day. I swear I've got the laziest cats in the world. But yeah, 2 kitty cats, 2 black kitty cats. And I have lots of friends with dogs, and I love playing with the dogs as well. Eduardo, opinion in bridges. I feel like it's very interesting all around this exercise and the modern life. Thanks. Greetings from Mexico. Good to see you. Love bridges. And this is one of the biggest mistakes and regrets in my calisthenics training career is I never took bridges as seriously as I should have. When I first got convict conditioning, I was like, yeah, pull-ups and dips and push-ups. All right. Squats. Yeah, sure. I'll do some of that. Bridges. I don't need to do that. And it was like 2 or 3 years before I started to actually bridge seriously. And the reason why I didn't do it very seriously is because I suck at them. I'm terrible at bridges. Why? Because my muscle activation on my backside is atrociously bad. I mean, really bad. And like a lot of guys who are unaware of mind muscle connection stuff, we figure, well, that's just the way I am, or we blame the exercise. Like, that's a bad exercise. That's a crap exercise. That's not strength. That's a skill. And all these other sorts of nonsensical things we make excuses for so we don't do it. But last year, I used table bridges a lot, or, reverse planks, in other words, and that's part of grind style calisthenics. But last year, I finally started seeing a chiropractor who's amazing. And he finally started to get my back put in together. I mean, he's fixing issues that I've had since I was a kid, kind of thing. And suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I can kind of engage my spinal erectors now. Oh my hips are finally working. Oh, suddenly bridges, I still suck at them, but bridges are very satisfying and they feel great. So for that regard, bridges are one of those things that they're a good a way to address a lot of imbalances. And I definitely think they're a very good idea. Mike Ellis, I'm 52, been doing ISO training, doing 20 seconds, 3 sets, very good. 20 seconds rest, squats, chin press, good. Day 2, row, push, row, deadlift, good. Opinion on longer 100% pressure. Well, yeah, overcoming isometrics 100%, go for it for sure. Maybe you'd have a warm-up one that's like 80% or so. But yeah, that's a great thing about overcoming isometrics, is that it's something you just go for it. I like your 20-second interval there and 20 seconds off. I think what you're doing there is perfect. And the whole point with overcoming isometrics is not to work the muscle to max capacity. It's to work the muscle more than before. So you're going to get to that point where you feel the muscle engaging and you're like, yep, there we go. That's what my isometric is, that level of intensity. Yep. And then you somehow, in the depths of your soul and the back of your mind, say, nope, I could go just a little tiny bit more. And that's the real value of overcoming isometrics, is being able to get that ounce of progressive where you go a little bit beyond what you think is your max, because it really isn't your max. It's about resetting your max, in other words. Hello. Hey, Matt, do you have any advice for avoiding shoulder joint pain from lateral raises? Yeah, don't do them. That, funny enough, you should ask, is that was the first ever strength training injury I ever got. It was lateral raises with dumbbells. And of course, no idea what I was doing. A lot of scapular raising, 20-pound dumbbells, because you're supposed to be adding weight to the... No, lateral raises, again, I put that in the same category as like the biceps and triceps and stuff like that. Honestly, I don't think they're really, worth doing, to be perfectly honest. I was training a guy one time who wanted me to look at his program, and we were laying out his workout log and everything like that. And he had lateral raises, and he's like, I keep these in and stuff. And I'm like, great, but I won't even put them in the log. Like, I won't log them, because you're doing like lateral raises for 2 sets of 12 with 12-pound dumbbells. 5 years from now, what are you going to be doing? 2 sets of 12 with 12-pound dumbbells, right? It's a very hard exercise to progress. It's very difficult to get technically well, because the second you start moving around, it gets a little wonky. Again, it's not bad if you got everything dialed in, but I just don't think it's a very worthwhile exercise. I would bet money that if you never did it, you'd never miss it. It probably won't make that much difference to your shoulder size. I know a lot of times people are like, but I want wider shoulders. I want to address right here. I've never seen someone with very well-developed anterior and posterior deltoids and very small, weak lateral deltoids. Never happens. I've never seen it. So the lateral raise, again, put it in one of those nice to have, feels good kind of exercises, but I wouldn't expect much out of it. If you had it, great. Hope it feels good in the moment, because that's about the only reason to do it. Make sure your technique is on point. Probably go lighter than you think you need to. Bands are really good for it as well. And just use it as you wish, but don't expect much from it. Claude Ligli. Hey, Matt, what home exercise do you recommend for the lower back? For example, something that could replace hyperextension machine at the gym. So the bridge work that I talked about. Now, this is something that I often address, is don't work your lower back, because there's nothing really there to work. The lower back is more like a joint rather than a muscle group, as I've discussed at length in many of my books. Lots of times when we think we have a lower back, it's actually weak glutes and hamstrings, or lats and erectors, which is kind of sort of technically lower back, but not quite. What you want to do is have tension go through your lower back, not into it. And a lot of times our, quote, weak lower back is from either weak glutes and hamstrings, most of the time that's it, or poor posture. So bridge work is really good for that. That's usually the, quote, low back exercise in the bodyweight world, as well as make sure that you're engaging your glutes and hamstrings throughout the day when you're standing too. Because people are like, my sore lower back, I stand all day at my desk or whatever. My sore lower back has nothing to do with your lower back muscles. There's only technically one lower back muscle, your QL, your quadratus lumborum, and it's a small muscle and it's a weak muscle, and you'll never get it strong enough to be adequate for that. But your glutes and hamstrings are certainly a different story for that. So use the bridges for the sake of your glutes and hamstrings while stabilizing your back, and that's probably going to be the best, quote, lower back solution that you can go for. Let's see if I can't answer these even faster. Go ahead. I can't even pronounce that screen name. Hey, Matt, how are you doing? I play basketball, and I'm wondering if doing overcoming isometric exercises for my calves can increase my vertical jump. I wouldn't doubt it. Calf overcoming isometrics are difficult to do. I address them in my book, Overcoming Isometrics, because I was able to hold on to these wood planks on the side of a bridge. And it's very, very satisfying. If you've got like a chain and bar device, it's good there. Funny side story, the wood planks that I was holding onto for that image in my book were terribly old and warped, and I got a million splinters in my hand from doing that. But yeah, I definitely think it's a very good thing to do, is the calf raise. Just a few seconds before a game, see if you can grab onto like a bleacher or something that you can't lift up on and just engage it a little bit, but make sure your quads, hamstrings, and glutes are engaged at the same time. Because the only way you're going to get that jump to be really good is if you can integrate the energy from your calves throughout the rest of your legs, especially in your hips. So make sure everything else in your legs and your glutes and your hamstrings are also engaged. And if you're holding on to something, your back as well. And that way you're not only strengthening your calves, but you're also getting the energy to transfer throughout your entire body, which makes you more efficient at jumping as well. Let's see here. Oops. What other questions we got? Chuck. I like that. Screen name I can read. Chuck. Very, very straightforward. Any ideas for a good anchor point for seated rows with the ISO trainer? I don't like wrapping them around my feet. Oh, I like that. That's a good one. Let's see. If you can find just a plank of wood, that can work very well. So you have a plank of wood, like a 2x6 that you can wrap the strap around. Just make sure it's well anchored, because you don't want it to slip and then suddenly it releases on you. It's not going to be like a band where it just has a lot of energy coming back, but it will be certainly jarring. So I would just take a simple 2x6 plank of wood that's maybe a foot long, put your feet against it with the strap on the other side and pull with that. That's probably the easiest way to go about it. Yeah, do that. Let's just leave it there. Do that. That's going to be your best bet, because if there's anything that the ISO trainer can benefit from, it's just a simple platform like that. Because you have the same thing when you're doing deadlifts. Because if you're, excuse me, if you stand on the trainer and you're doing deadlifts, the strap is going underneath the outside of your feet and it's pulling your feet up and in towards each other. So if you're on a plank or a platform, then it's going to be a hell of a lot more stable and stronger. So just get something like that, and that will be just what you need there. Carl Stroman. Hey, Matt, I have somewhat of a personal question. Have you always been a trainer professionally, or did you do something else before? Very good. I've been a trainer for about 20 years now, and I actually got my start in the fitness industry in the equipment field. I started working for a place that sold home gyms, and it was a pretty small outfit, but I learned how to build, sell, fix basically any type of equipment. And then I was like, well, why would you use that handle instead of this handle on this cable machine, and so on? And that's why, like, initially I thought that the secret for whatever body you were trying to build was in the equipment you used, not even the exercise or the programming, but it was all like, what's the best type of equipment for building the biceps and things like that. That's why, like, I was practically losing sleep every night going, how in the world am I going to get a cable crossover in this tiny little apartment? Because I thought it's impossible to build your chest up without a cable crossover. So that was what I did in a life beforehand in the fitness world. Let's see what else we can get to. Fraj Ahmad. Hey, Matt. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. Do you think that we should develop our anaerobic and aerobic respiration in order to progress to make a good capillarization as an example? Yeah, there's definitely benefits to both sides of things. So it depends on what kind of training you're doing, of course. If you want to be more of an endurance style activity or short distance, which is more anaerobic and stuff. But it's definitely one of those things that you have range for. You could be that type of power lifter, bodybuilder where everything's anaerobic, but you get out of breath climbing a flight of stairs. And there's probably going to be some benefit to go out for a quick run or go for a short bike ride once in a while, just to make sure you're using the other metabolic energy systems, because that's not going to hold you back. If you're really weak aerobically, then you're going to get really out of breath doing anything, and that's going to hold you back in your training. But it's the same thing too, the other way. And you have, like you were saying, capillarization, you've got adaptation in your blood vessels, you've got mitochondria density, you've got 100 other things going on. So even if you're specializing in one type of aerobic or anaerobic type training, venturing on the other side every once in a while can only be a good thing for you, is going to give you more broad, and it's not going to compromise you at all. Some guys that like, oh my God, if I run for 5 minutes, I'm going to kill my gains and stuff. It's like, no, you're not. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Let's see. A couple more. Is it worth eating more protein, eggs, meat, even if I am only doing 50 push-ups a day? It's a very good. I love this question. This is such an insightful thing, because it's not just assuming you need more, but it's like, if I'm only doing this, do I need more? And protein's one of those things that you don't want to get into like, I always need more kind of thing. But sometimes we wonder, what if I just had a little bit more? So in these sorts of instances, I always recommend the same thing though. Get to a stable diet. Get to a place where your diet's pretty stable, some protein at every meal, like I recommend in my 3P strategy, and then increase it. Double the eggs you have at breakfast, a little more, it doesn't matter how much, just more. And see if you feel anything. Does your energy level go up? Are you feeling better? Do you recover faster? Like, this is one of the best things about fitness that you can probably take away from today's lesson, is if you're ever like, do I need to do this or should I do this and stuff? Get to a stable habit regarding that thing and give it a try. Chances are it's not going to be a sort of thing where it's like, well, if it's going to be bad, it's going to be terrible. No, it's probably going to be something that's going to, give you some feedback. And usually when we have a stable thing, like you add some protein and stuff, I'm willing to bet most of the time, nothing's going to really happen. Because a lot of times this stuff doesn't really matter that much. But if it does matter, you're going to know it pretty quick. I've seen some people where I give them the same advice and they come back and like, dude, I'm eating more protein now. Wow, what a difference that makes. I feel so much better and my workouts are better and I look better. And it's like, that's the kind of result you're looking for. Is if it matters, it's going to really matter. But for a lot of us, we've got this stuff covered already. If you're already eating a good amount of food and it's got a good amount of protein to it, you're probably covered with it. But you can try it as a fun little experiment, just see what happens and go from there. You can learn a lot from experience. S. Lee, hey Matt, the start of my journey, I started as a skinny fat, and now I train a lot and I can see myself getting more muscle. Congrats. But still having a lot of fat on my belly. Can I get rid of it? Is it genetics? You're both right. So yeah, adipose tissue storage is a genetic thing, just where you have it. Some people are lucky, like me. I just have it kind of evenly distributed throughout my body. Although I did have a ultrasound one time test, and they were like, yep, you're still lean, but you got a little bit more fat in your belly. I'm like, yep, welcome to the male gender. That's where we store it, kind of thing. But yeah, that's where you're going to have it. That's where it's always going to be more of, and that's where you're going to lose it last. And because you're a guy, that's where you have more fat cells. So that's how it's going to run. But there's nothing saying you can't lose it. I mean, it's going to be harder, but I would certainly be hesitant to say it can't be done, because I've been proven wrong in that field so many times that it's like, sure, why not? Let's see. Okay, my question thing just suddenly went all kinds of crazy. So I'm gonna be answering questions, but I don't know if I'm getting these in order here. Apologies if I miss anybody. But Mohammed, I have the same issue with no glute activation. Could do tons of squats and feel nothing there. I had reverse lunges, can feel it all working. What other compound exercises do you recommend? This is awesome. So when we have good activation, the activation should be present no matter what we're doing. But we have to, again, remember that it's not the exercise that works the muscle. It's you that engage the muscle during the exercise. So let's not put the cart before the horse here. I recommend using the overcoming isometric exercise for the hamstrings and glutes I talked about earlier, where you drive your heel against the wall and get that glute lit up. Use the exercises that you can feel your glutes more in, like your reverse lunges, and you feel how that's working. Mentally, the way I like to think about it is I'm driving my glutes into my hamstrings. I don't know why, it just works for me. Sometimes the ability to engage a muscle literally just boils down to how you think about the muscle. And so use it that way, and then try to get that to carry over to the other exercises like your squats, jumping, and so on. Because real good muscle activation, when it's really up there, it shouldn't matter what you're doing. Like, I don't care what I'm doing. Standing still, my glutes are working, right? Walking up a flight of stairs, my glutes are working. Anything that uses the hips or hip extension is a glute exercise now. And that's really kind of the holy grail of muscle activation. Same thing with like biceps. Like anything that bends the elbow or puts force in that direction is a bicep exercise, regardless of what your grip is. Overhand grip, neutral grip, commando grip, farmer carries, all of it's bicep exercises. Because probably the best way to really ensure that you can build and strengthen a muscle isn't to use the best exercise where you feel it working the best, is to use that muscle effectively all the time. That's how I built up my calves. What exercise did you do? I didn't do anything for my calves. I rode my bike and did taekwondo and climbed mountains and ran and did everything. Why? Because my calves are working all the time with everything. And if you can get to that point with your muscles, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to build and strengthen them rather than what's that one coveted exercise or muscle group. Jen Zem, it's good to see you. Pelvic tilt and high hips, what would be the best way to address that? So I'm assuming you're talking about an anterior pelvic tilt, maybe? So cat cows are a good exercise. I like cat cows because it gives you the ability to practice tilting your pelvis front to back, anterior and posterior without any weight on it. And that gives you the awareness of how to tilt your pelvis using your abs, your glutes, your hamstrings and stuff. Then you can progress that with your plank. And if you can become more proficient in controlling your pelvic tilt in a plank, then you have plenty of control over your quads, abs, glutes, and hamstrings that are responsible for most of that tilting, and be more of a proactive engagement about being able to control your pelvic tilt. Binary Surf, how's it going? Hey, Matt, well, do you think splitting workouts on push-pull leg by day, doing all these exercises, EMOMs, would give good gains? Hell if I know. No idea, because your gains don't depend on any of that. Your gains don't depend on your workouts. They depend on progressive muscle tension. So that's our target, right? Are you making your muscles work progressively harder? That's what we want to focus on. Anytime we're considering, what about this workout? What about this exercise? What about this split? What about EMOM versus Tabata versus stop rest training? We've got a million different ways of working the muscle. None of it holds any power whatsoever in getting you what you want. It's all just different vehicles. It's kind of like sitting in a million cars in a parking lot saying, which one's going to get me to the airport? None of them do, unless they're self-driving now. The analogy doesn't stick too well with future driving cars. You drive the car, right? So once again, it boils down to you drive the muscles. These are just vehicles. Use whatever the hell you want. But you're going to probably, from your experience, recognize, like, I can really feel like I can work my muscles harder if I do this type of workout. If I do an EMOM, or if I do just straight sets, or if I do total work sets or whatever. We have a lot of different things we can do. So through your experience, you always want to be putting your compass needle on which one makes it easier to work my muscles harder. That's ultimately what we're boiling down to. If you want your muscles to get bigger and stronger, what's the easiest way to make your muscles work really hard? and then base all of your decisions off of that. That's your compass needle. And it's going to be different for everybody. Some people are like, well, I like this exercise. Some people are like, well, I like that type of workout and stuff. Whatever your experience tells you, go with that. So if you're in the back of your mind going like, I think this might be a little bit better. I think if I do an EMOM, that could be good. I could see that working. Great, go for it. Again, if it's going to really matter, it's going to really matter. It's going to give you that feedback of like, whoa, that is so much better. Whoa, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it that way kind of thing. But if you do it and you're like, I guess that was good. Well, it probably doesn't matter one way or the other. But we want to keep our attention on that. Are you progressively working your muscles harder? That's the entire goal. Marion White, did you play sports in your youth? Well, I tried. I sucked. Really, really sucked. So I played a lot of basketball back in the day. My friends and I, we loved playing pickup basketball. And I joined in grade school. We had a basketball team. And if you didn't make the basketball team, you were part of the B team. If you didn't make the B team, you were part of the C team. And I was on the C team as one of the worst players. My season high was 4 points. Not in a game, for the entire season. 2 baskets. That was my entire point. But I could run the court well. I could track down anybody on a breakaway and hunt them down like a velociraptor. And that's when I learned, okay, maybe not basketball, but I can run and I can, ride my bike really fast. And that's why I went in that direction. But yeah, and then in high school and stuff, it was all Taekwondo and then bike racing in college. Dave, Star Wars or Star Trek? Star Wars, dude. Honestly, I don't know Star Trek from a hole in the wall, to be perfectly honest. I never got into Star Trek. I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't get into it. My friends weren't into it or anything. Like I probably have seen only one of the movies. I never could get into Star Trek. But my dad, some of my earliest memories was watching Empire Strikes Back in the theater and being on the edge of my seat, just having my mind blown by like, whoa. And it's been Star Wars ever since. Mohammed asking again, hey Matt, push-ups, using my front shoulder areas fail before my chest gets much work. Should I add more shoulder work or continue as I am? Neither. So this is really good. This is kind of going with what I was saying earlier about how a muscle can be a weak link and it'll get stronger and then it will fail to be the weak link. But there are some times and cases where your technique is off in such a way that you're putting all the stress in one area. And as a result, that's just going to fail quickly and nothing you do is ever going to make that up. Because again, you get the front of the shoulder. It's a relatively small area. It's never going to be good enough. So what you want to do is I would bet money you're hunching. You've got the dreaded push-up hunch, which is very, very common when you're doing push-ups. So do this. Start on the floor with push-ups. So lay down, your belly is on the floor, put your hands where you normally have them, and pull your shoulders as far away from the floor as possible, both away from the floor and away from your ears. Push up from that position. If you can't do that, just do it on an inclined surface. Squeeze the arms in as you push up. You should be getting your chest engaged with that. Yes, you want your shoulders working, but you want to feel like it's really blasting the hell out of your chest. So packing those shoulders down and back, which is what that does, will probably make that more possible. All right, just a few more here to wrap up. What do you think about weighted shoulder dislocations gymnasts do as warm-ups? Is it good to load gradually as heavy as we can? I don't even know that exercise. I don't do it. I don't practice it. I shouldn't have an opinion on it, and I don't. Ask someone who does it. And if they do it, they could probably give you good instruction on it. Papi Sipe, I just started training again after 7 years. Wow, welcome back. Congratulations. So basically beginner again. Not really as beginner as you probably think. Just bought rings. Should I wait to start using them? Nope. Use them right away. Use them right now. One of the reasons why I like suspension equipment like rings is because it makes it more accessible to do exercises as a, quote, beginner. So if anything, I was like, good, that's exactly where you should be doing. Definitely hit those for sure. Joseph, I'm a kickboxer and PE instructor. Good, keep the kids in line. Wow, that's awesome, man. But the issue I'm having is my shoulder. Most times when I lift or train, I do feel like it's dislocating. That can't be good. If it feels like that, get to a doctor, get someone to see it, physical therapist, athletic trainer, You're a PE teacher. See if there's anybody on staff who can take a look at that. See if something's moving the way it shouldn't be. But yeah, get some one-on-one on that. Hey, Matt, Claude Legui, I'm trying to eliminate gym membership and work out at home. Do you recommend buying a decline sit-up bench for ab work or stick to floor ab exercises like leg raises, bicycle crunches? Yeah, I'd stick to the floor. Not that I have anything against the decline bench, but it's a big piece of equipment to put into a home. And whenever we're looking at home gyms, we want to look at what type of equipment is going to give us the most bang for the buck, not just your financial buck, but space as well. And decline benches and stuff like that, they typically just don't do a whole lot of stuff. You got decline bench, dumbbell bench, decline flies, I guess, leg raises, sit-ups and stuff. But I mean, you can get all this stuff through other means. I wouldn't go with the decline bench. I would go with something you can hang from more than anything else. That's priority number one. Something you can hang from. Check out the Duonomic pull-up handles that go in a doorway down below in the description. That's the doorway pull-up handles that I highly recommend. And they also have a ring setup that works out very well there. And that can be a good place to start for building a calisthenics home gym that fits in the doorway. But yeah, stick to the floor. The floor is better for ab training than people think it is. Should make a video on that. I feel like the chef from the Muppets. Hey, Matt, what is the most fundamental thing you learned during your fitness journey? Regards from Switzerland. Oh, I was right. Switzerland, the Swedish chef. Sorry for butchering your name there. Fundamental thing you learned during a fitness journey. 3 things. Number 1, it's not about the exercise. It's not about the diet. It's not about the equipment you're using or anything like that. It's all about those fundamental processes of mother and human nature. Okay, so calories in or nutrition in, nutrition out for diet, stimulus and adaptation for exercise, and cost to benefit ratio for humans, human behavior. That's first and foremost. You're not going to get the results you want because of the method you follow. It's how well that method influences that process. Number 2, that process is always ongoing. You cannot control it. You can't stop it. You can't begin it. You're never fully in control of your results. You're just influencing what's already happening. Just like we can't control the weather, but you can wear a raincoat. You can plan to go outside when it's sunny outside, but you can't control your fitness. And lastly, the biggest lie and scam that is out there in fitness is diets and programs and people trying to sell you something, promising you that control. If you follow this diet, if you use this exercise, if you use my product or whatever, you can have control over your fitness. No, you can't. You cannot have control. You can have more control by having more influence over that process, but nobody has 100% control because there's always influences outside of your control. Let's see if I can get to the last couple here. Nielsen, do you think it's possible if without get some illness to be ripped and muscular for some years after 6 years old, the genetics done in your very youth? Absolutely, sure. I know people who are ripped and jacked well into their 60s and 70s. Absolutely possible. Elysian is using resistance bands hanging off a pull-up bar to do overhead tricep extensions in which your lower body is lower your body in eccentric phase. It's like elevate yourself at concentric to equalize the intensity. I like where you're going with this, but I think you might be overthinking it a bit too much. For tricep extensions, I would just keep the body locked in place and go for it. I wouldn't, because I know what you're talking about. You got that resistance curve. It's kind of weird. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would just kind of lock the body in place and just get those extensions done. Daps, hey Matt, if you could only do 3 exercises for the rest of your life, what would they be? Love the channel. Thank you very much. Pull-ups, push-ups, and hover squats. There we go. Pull-ups, push-ups, and hover squats, or rows. Maybe rows instead of pull-ups, here and there, because you get the extension chain that way. But yeah, those would be the ways that I would go. Jen Zem, hey Matt, thanks for that answer. Another question entirely off a different angle. Biking, oh good, just for sports, or do you backpack as well? I haven't done any backpack biking. I'm very much, biking. I was a cross-country racer in college, so my mind immediately goes like, extra weight. I don't want that kind of thing, even though I'm much heavier now than when I was racing. But no, I never got into the backpacking kind of stuff. I figure if there's a destination I want to reach that's like 3 or 4 days away, I'm going to drive. Instead, I like to keep my rides a couple of hours in length, 3 or 4 max. Hey, Matt, your channel has been so helpful to me over the years. Thank you very much. So I have a couple of questions. Would you use exercises like one-arm pull-ups to build with volume to build muscle? Sure, absolutely. If you can do it with volume, better on you if you can. It's one of those things that I mean, if you can do it, if you can even do it, of course, you can always regress it, with feet on the floor, kind of one-arm pull-ups and stuff. So it's one of those things but yeah, the principles of fitness don't change because you do a different exercise. If you can max out 3 sets of 10, regardless of what the exercise is, you're creating the same stimulus. Why does my pec minor hurt when doing push-ups? Not quite sure on that one. It could be, again, the push-up hunch. That would be my go-to answer for that. See if you can get someone to take a look at it. Fraja Ahmed, once again, sorry, Matt. A lot of questions popping up. That's why I hold these things. This has been a very successful live feed. I think I'm going to do this more often, like once a month at least. Of course, you're always welcome to come on and ask questions every time, but I like to have a topic of the week that I address as well. But anyway, I need your advice regarding the ergonomics of my workout at home. My room is 5 meters square. Sometimes I feel like I'm a convicted dude. Sorry, I'm here in America. I don't know this meter thing. So what? You've got enough room to play baseball in it? Is that like 100 yards? I don't know. I joke, of course. We Americans are so bad about the metric system. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So here's my advice. Get outside. Get outside. The best place to work out is outdoors. Find a park, find a local playground, get on the Maps app on your smartphone and take a bird's eye view to see if you can find a park. That's probably the best place where you can get some space. Get a pull-up bar for your room. You don't need a lot of space. I mean, hell, Paul Wade did it in his cell. So get a pull-up bar. Again, the Duonomic pull-up handles down below description. Hint, hint. Check that out. You can put a lot of stuff in a doorway. That can be very good. And if you can, get enough space for you to just lay down for push-ups and stuff, then you've got enough space to do most basic floor calisthenics as well. Oh my goodness, Lent is in the house. Lent, doing? It's good to see you. If a time machine allowed you 10 seconds to talk to your 20-year-old self, why 10 seconds? Okay, fine. A 20-year-old self, what would you tell him? Buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin and sell it when it's $69,000. That's what I would tell him. But I'm assuming you're saying like fitness-wise. I would say I would go into the future to get the book that I'm writing on the fundamental approach to fitness, and then I would take it back to my 20-year self, hit myself upside the head with it and say, read this, you dumb idiot, and then disappear. And of course, you'd probably be looking around going, what the hell was that? But that's what I wish I could do, is just tell him to read that book that I'm working on now. Sam Boner, hey, Matt. Hi from UK. Hello from the UK. Massively appreciate your work, RDP. Thank you. Thank you very much. Quick question. I have limited time, so tend to do a GSC push-pull squat format each session. Good. Is this okay, or should I mix it up? No, go for it, man. Hard to go wrong with push-pull squat. It's one of those bare bones, basic things. It's kind of hard to mess that up, as I tell clients all the time. Just do that. It's great as it is. And as a reminder, folks, don't forget that the Grind Style Calisthenics workout program is live. It is completely free on the RDP YouTube channel. And each month has a new workout for the month with completely free downloads. So look for that for the first on each month. But if you search on the channel, GSC workout, you'll get that as well. Hi, Matt. What is the longest to hold an ISO for strength? I would say 10 seconds. If you're really going for strength, 10 seconds. But that's the thing, is ISOs are going to hit strength no matter how you do it. That's one of the great things about isometric. I made a video on this maybe a couple of weeks ago where I was like, look, it probably doesn't even matter how you program isometric training, because fundamentally you're always doing the same thing. If you hold for a minute, you're going to start off as hard as possible, and then it's going to decrease and decrease and decrease, and you're going to hold it as long as you can. And if you do it for 10 seconds, you're going to hold it as hard as possible and hold it that way for 10 seconds. So honestly, it may not even matter how you do isometrics. So it's one of those great things. It's one of those things that, it's like shooting a hole in one on golf when the hole is the Grand Canyon. It's kind of hard to mess up. So it's usually more of just how long do you want to hold it for. Champ in the making asking, hey, Matt, what do you think about shaving head and cutting my hair lately at 2 to 1 millimeters, and I like it. Yeah, the reason why I started shaving is because I had such a hard time getting that length consistent with a trimmer. Because I mean, it's not aesthetic, by choice. I've lost almost all of my hair on the top of my head and down by the sides, so it's mostly by Mother Nature. But I did do the trim thing for a while, but I could never get it to be even around my head. I would always miss stuff in the back, and it would be longer and streaks and stuff like that. So I would shave it because it's easier for me if I run my hand around my head. It's like, oh, I missed a spot, and then I can address it. So that's why I shave it, but it makes it so much easier, and your hair grows back 1 to 2 millimeters in a day anyway. So I find it's just a hell of a lot easier to shave than to trim. Plus, you could just get it taken care of in the shower. I shave my face, shave my head, done. I don't need a separate tool for it and stuff. It just seems to be a lot easier in my opinion. That's what I find. A couple more. I know I said that a couple more ago, but I love doing this. It's so much fun to be doing this with you folks. Matt asking again if you have read The Warrior Diet by Uri Hofmeister. Excuse me. I should be able to pronounce his name. I met him in a gym one time years ago, and we hung out like for an afternoon. He was a cool guy. What are your thoughts? Yeah, it's basically paleo-esque fasting kind of stuff. I mean, eat good food and try not to eat too much of it kind of stuff. Again, my whole thing with diets are for newbies. You shouldn't need to be told how to eat. You should eat however the hell you want, and then just make your changes based on how things feel. Like, oh, I ate too much. Well, then you eat less. Oh, I feel better if I don't eat quite as often. Well, then eat less kind of thing. Go off of just how you feel. We shouldn't need diets. The whole diet industry is based on this premise that diet and nutrition is so complicated and it's so scientific and we've got to get it just right. And if you leave yourself to your own devices, you're going to eat nothing but junk food and go off the rails and stuff. And I don't believe that stuff at all, even though I used to believe it big time. So diets, think about it this way. A diet is a template. It's a place to start. It's like when you're building a website or something, you have a template and then you're like, great, that's the start. Now I'm going to make all these changes to it because that's what I need to make it mine. And so that's what I recommend with stuff like that. Give it a shot, but change it however you like as quickly as possible, because chances are very good no diet or exercise approach is going to be what you really need out of the box. That includes my own stuff too. GSC, great. This is the grind style calisthenics workout for June. Awesome. Should I make these changes? Absolutely. Whatever changes you think you should make them, because the feedback you get will tell you what you really need to know. Mariano with the last one. Promise the last one here, folks. Hey, Matt, it's a good idea as a squat finisher to do a short, intense run-in-place exercise with your knees high up. Be fit, live free from Israel. So, yeah, I like that, but I'm wondering how are you going to get the quads as well? That's a good one. I honestly don't know. I should try that, because in my experience, whenever I'm like, I need to try it in order to know. Like hover lunges are a good example. I've known about that exercise for years, and I never recommended it until one day I had to demonstrate it. And I was like, damn, this is a really good exercise. And now it's my favorite leg exercise that I'm always recommending to people. So I would go with what do you think? But remember, it's a finisher. You're trying to burn out the legs. Now, whenever I've run in place, like I do that as a warm-up for Taekwondo, I use it more of a hip thing. Hip activation, hip flexors, hip stabilizers. I don't feel like it's really blasting my bigger leg muscles like my quads and stuff like that. It's more of just getting the hips woken up. So I think that might be what it is, but you could be doing it in such a way that it's a little different. If you are looking to finish off the legs, I would look at more of like a sprint, like in distance, but I'm assuming you're running in place like that because you don't have space. Maybe, in which case I would recommend jump lunges or jump squats instead. So those are my 2 cents there. All right, folks, I have got to run. This has been the longest podcast yet because you all were so awesome and coming in with great questions. Thank you so very, very much for all of your attention. I sincerely appreciate it. Again, the audios for my podcasts are all at the podcast directory of your choice. I post them within 24 hours afterwards. So if you missed questions or something wasn't clear and you need to hear it again, you can rewatch this on the YouTube channel, or you can just get the podcast, the audio, and listen to that as well. If you have further questions, DM me, Red Delta Project, on Instagram, and I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.